Initially, when I started my research on how globalization has impacted mental health and vice versa, I wanted to find research directly correlating outsourcing production to other countries and how it's led to mental illness. But throughout my research, I ran across a major problem that there is an enormous lack of transparency from countries and their statistics on mental illness. I found that the few statistics that are available throughout the internet are outdated or skewed because they don't represent the majority of mental illness. So instead, I decided to find research on mental illness roots, causes, and treatments in the US and compare it to other countries. Based off of this evidence, I can build predictions of the globalization of mental health statistics. The current conversation about mental illness throughout the U.S. consists of media representations of individuals that are dangerous to themselves and others. The media continues to pair mental health with crime, terrorism, and lately mass shooters. This has only led to further the stereotype and stigma of mental health. Because we have failed to understand what mental health is and its roots, we have failed to provide successful interventions and treatment options. Statistics show that this problem is much more common than expected. 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. have mental health conditions, and 1 in 25 have serious mental illness. Unfortunately, in the last year, the statistic has increased. Now, 1 in 4 adults in the U.S. have mental health issues, and 1 in 17 have a serious mental health condition. Based on a 2010 study, the global direct and indirect economic cost of mental health disorders was estimated at 2.5 trillion, and the direct and indirect costs can be found in homelessness, employment, disability, mortality, etc. The decrease of mental health is largely due to the lack of understanding to the multidirectional drivers. Mental health as a whole can be only understood from a biopsychosocial lens, and the overemphasis in one area or lack of attention entirely has led to massive detrimental effects.
There are thought to be about 100 million people in this country with common mental disorders and up to 20 million with severe mental illnesses such as schizophrenia. For all of them, there are about 5,000 psychiatrists in this country.
It is a taboo subject, the stigma especially hard on families of people with mental illness, treated as a curse, a demonic possession, or karma for misdeeds of a past life.
Patients stay for weeks, months, even years, often without any diagnosis.
When finding comparisons within the mentally ill populations between other countries and America, one would expect a large difference. But the truth is that instead of chaining mentally ill in public spaces, we leave them deserted in our homeless populations and lock them in prison.
I was hallucinating while I was in a jail cell. The worst thing they could have done to me is keep me away from medicine. It made me worse off than I was before.
A similarity I found in all 4 outlooks of mental illness in America and other countries is a high level of social disconnectedness. The health risks associated with social isolation have been shown to be linked to an increase of depression and anxiety, and even other physical illnesses such as obesity. Collier may use this data to have further evidence of the social isolation that could be due to figurative traps that nations find themselves in due to landlocks of nations, lack of government spending in mental health treatments, which further social isolation and make it even worse and difficult to escape the cycle. By understanding this research and analyzing the work structure of sweatshops built by the outsourcing of production in low-income nations, we can see the isolation that these workers are in for large portions of the day, and this could be one of many drivers for the increase of mental illness in their society. Another similarity between U.S. and other mentally ill populations across the world is its correlations to poverty.
Nyandarua is among the marginalized counties in Kenya. The rate of poverty is higher than some other places. This might cause the suicide rate to be high. There before, let's say about 10 years and behind, there were no much suicides in the county. So it is increasing. It is increasing by a very big number. It's alarming now. It's alarming now.
An American study done by Hare and her colleagues found that children that come from households that live below the federal poverty line had as much as 8 to 10% decrease of gray matter found in areas of the brain such as the hippocampus, frontal, and temporal lobe. These statistics are extremely alarming outside of the fact that health disparities starting from an early age continue throughout adulthood, but also that these areas of the brain are essential for language acquisition, problem solving, and memory associations. Damage or lack of development in these areas can cause problems in becoming a contributing working member of society, and without a form of work, this can increase the chances of poverty, thus leading to mental illness. This is heavily related to Link's point of view of the fundamental causes of illness. He points out that low SES is correlated with gender, race, low education, and this creates a cycle in which an individual is unable to access goods or services to escape illness, and this can further lead to depression and suicide.
Rata suffers from seizures. He may have epilepsy, but his mother tells members of the health team she's not taking him to hospital. Instead, she's imprisoned her son in a shack outside the family home, and she seems ashamed.
Access to care is not there, lack of professionals, lack of medication, lack of awareness, lack of knowledge. So all this leads to only one thing, that you go to the easiest and the most available source of help.
I believe Farmer would agree with me that one of the first ways to stop the structural violence stemming from social injustice, not only in other countries but in America as well, is to have multiple levels of intervention, including preventative treatments, which is the most cost effective, but also curative. Relocating government spending on large asylums of mental institutions to community-based care, as well as creating work environments where people are socializing and communicating, can decrease the onset of depression. Setting a minimum wage and outsourcing production sites, as well as health benefits for individuals, can help the poverty cycle that increases mental illness. As for curative treatments, the hybridization of mental health treatment can be seen as a positive aspect of globalization of mental health.
At St. Camille, patients also learn practical skills they can use to earn money. Raymond Madou was one of St. Camille's patients. Once he began to take medication for bipolar disorder, Aung Bono helped him set up this bakery. He now runs it with other recovered patients.
Le travail libère l'homme. Sans le travail, l'homme n'est rien. Si les autres aussi ils trouvent du travail à faire, ils auront aussi la joie de vivre, comme moi.
Generally, mental health in Western cultures is highly psychiatric and healed with medicine, and the opposite is found in Eastern cultures. As we discussed earlier, a biopsychosocial view of mental health is the only view of mental health that equally addresses the different levels of mental illness. The hybridization of Western and Eastern treatments has led to enormous success of patients re-entering society and at a very low economic cost.
The shrine allowed psychiatrists to set up clinics inside and just outside the premises. They also began to train faith healers to look for telltale signs of common mental illness. Khadims like Saidumia Mehmood Ali see such symptoms, like those of 23-year-old Javed, through a very different therapeutic lens. But after a session of ritual and prayer, Ali brought his patient to see his psychiatrist tag team partner, Dr. Yatin Bushan. After clarifying with his parents that there was indeed no real threat to Javed, Dr. Bushan renewed a prescription for the anti-schizophrenia drugs. Javed's mother, Saira Banu, said his condition had improved after he began taking them.
Intervention treatments such as these are culturally sensitive and require little economic funds and increase the chances of an individual to re-enter society due to accessibility to resources. My conclusion is that even though there is no available data on mental illness in poor countries, finding similarities in the world's mental illness populations and applying research studies to data of poverty levels in work environments has helped me predict the detrimental effects that globalization can have on mental health. At the same time, hybridization has shown to be beneficial in development treatment options around the globe. In order to incite change, there needs to be a growing set of research on the mental health effects of globalization, as well as the economic consequences. But before any of these, there needs to be an increased awareness of the prevalence of mental illness in order to debunk the lies behind it. So we need to begin to understand the biological, sociological, and psychological factors behind mental illness around the globe.